Normal haunted places are scary, but haunted churches, a completely different story. So, let's take a look at them. Buckland Abbey is a 700-year-old house. It was built on the site of a former abbey, which was sold to Sir Francis Drake after he returned from his circumnavigation of the globe in 1580. But while Francis was a national hero, locals believed that he had only defeated the Spanish Armada because he'd made a pact with the devil. Sir Francis Drake's ghost is believed to ride across Dartmoor in a black coach driven by headless horses led by 12 chattering goblins and pursued by a pack of baying dogs. That is the most metal thing I've ever heard. But it's also kind of terrifying. It's also said that any living dog that hears the spectral hound is said to die instantly. So that's kind of sad. I'd veer away from this place if you have a dog. Egg Hill Church is one of the most haunted churches out there. Legend has it that the crazy pastor of the Egg Hill Church ended the lives of all of his parishioners post-communion, and soon after hanged himself and died as well. Because of this, visitors have reported hearing the cries of victims that died at the hands of the pastor, even though the building remains locked and empty. That wasn't enough. Word has it that the abandoned church and its premises are vandalized and haunted by ghosts. But the interesting thing is, Egg Hill Church did reportedly bear witness to a strange miracle. According to a story, a tornado struck the area during a camp meeting near the church, damaging trees and snapping branches all around. But the tents and the trees at the camp remained intact as people kneeled and prayed during the storm. So could these spirits who are locked inside the church have helped these folks? Who knows? Located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, St. Louis Cathedral is the oldest cathedral in the United States, still in use. The first version was constructed in 1718, and the final version of the cathedral was completed in the 1850s. Because of this long history, St. Louis Cathedral has become home to a number of spirits. One of the most famous ghosts to haunt the cathedral is Pierre Antoine, who served there as a priest from 1774 until his death in 1829. Pierre Antoine famously baptized Mary Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, and later performed the marriage to her first husband. Antoine's spirit has been seen walking through an alleyway outside the church, named after him, while quietly singing and looking in through the stained glass windows. Other ghosts include Pierre Antoine's predecessor, Pierre Dagobert, the pirate John Lafitte, and even the infamous Delphine Lalaurie. So if you ever go to this church, be prepared to see like a ghost or two. St. Mary's Episcopal Church, Kansas City. Father Henry David Jardine, a controversial Episcopal priest, is believed to haunt his former congregation at St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Henry came to the church in 1879, when it was still St. Luke's mission. He caused controversy by introducing Catholic practices, and there was speculation about him having a troubled past. In 1886, Henry died in St. Louis from an apparent chloroform overdose, which the Episcopal Church ultimately deemed was because of him taking his own life. Because of this, he could not be buried at St. Mary's as he'd intended, and the years since his death, visitors have smelled incense where there is none, and seen a ghostly figure thought to be him looking out one of the second-floor windows. During one paranormal investigation, an electromagnetic field detector went off near the altar, and the apparition of a priest was caught on film. In the year 2000, Jardine's body was moved to St. Mary's, and his final resting place now sits below the church's altar, and you'd think he'd stop showing himself around the church, but he hasn't. Constructed between 1882 and 1885, Most Holy Trinity Church in Brooklyn, along with its adjoining school and rectory, is believed to be extremely haunted. In 1897, church sexton George Stells was a victim of homicide in the church, but the criminal was never caught. Since then, a bloody handprint has occasionally appeared on the wall leading up to the bell tower, which is kinda cool. The school was built in 1887 on the site of the church's graveyard, although all the bodies were said to have been moved to a different location. Ghostly activity makes some suspect that a few bodies remain beneath the school. Yeah, building on top of a graveyard, I don't think that's ever worked out well for people. Always hear creepy stuff happening after that. People have seen lights in the gymnasium turn on and off by themselves for years, and heard footsteps when the gym is completely empty. The rectory is also the site of paranormal activity. The bedroom formerly used by Monsignor Michael May who died in 1895, is rarely used because of his ghost making noises in the room throughout the night. Dogs visiting the rectory have also been known to stare at the main staircase, even though it doesn't appear that anyone is there. But at least they don't drop dead instantly like before. And we're starting things off at number 10 with the red ghost. Now, this is actually a piece of footage, not a photo, but like I always say, footage is typically more entertaining anyway. This clip was sent to the YouTube channel Vault of Fear, who shared it online. The name of the church isn't given, nor is the location, but we see the camera person filming the church. Now, they either have terrible cinematography skills, or they're just kind of nervous because they saw something before they started filming. I'm not sure which. They eventually rest on the church altar though, where we clearly see a semi-translucent red figure walk from left to right. It then seems to crouch down before completely vanishing. This could definitely be a hoax, but if it isn't, and this is just what the person captured in camera, it's pretty incredible. Definitely not a trick of the light or anything. That looks like a figure walking across the floor. What do you all think though? Hoax? Genuine? Share your thoughts down below. And leave your comments down below even if you don't have any thoughts on this, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Nothing to lose. Number 9. Spooky figures. Back in 2017, 35-year-old Leah Harrison, visiting Lincoln Cathedral, captured something strange in a picture she snapped. She described the figure as looking like the ghostly figures of a woman and a boy, possibly the ghosts of a mother and son. It's kind of hard to make out these figures. They could definitely just be smudges or pixelation from the camera, but what adds to the credibility possible ghosts caught on camera here is that this church is said to be haunted. With it being constructed all the way back in 1072, the place certainly has a lot of history, so if these mysterious figures are indeed ghosts, then who could they be? Well, there's an interesting tale surrounding this church, and it all started in 1349 during the bubonic plague. As the Black Death swept over the town of Lincoln, the bodies began piling up, and the church, being overrun with corpses, eventually piled a bunch of them in a mass grave next to the cathedral. The spirits of those buried without proper ceremony or blessing are said to haunt the grounds, rising on the anniversary of their burial, forever trapped between heaven and hell. Sticking with Lincoln Cathedral for a moment, let's talk about the haunted well, pictured here. This well is associated with an urban legend surrounding the devil. Now, the well definitely has an old allure about it, being constructed nearly 1,000 years ago, but there's nothing immediately unsettling about it at first glance. But legend has it, if you walk around the well 7 times and stick your finger into one of the holes in the door, the devil himself will cast judgment on you. If you're deemed a good person, you'll simply feel his breath on your finger, but if he deems you a real miserable piece of crap, he'll chomp your finger clean off. What constitutes bad or good to Satan? That's hard to say. I think it's safe to assume though that sticking your finger into strange holes is probably not the best idea without knowing exactly what's going on in there. Next we have St. Mary's Church in Ackenham. St. Mary's Church is rumored to be haunted by the devil. According to local legends, the devil is believed to rest beneath the church, specifically beneath a broken tombstone known as the Devil's Grave. The church, situated in the small village of Ackenham, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, has gained a reputation for supernatural occurrences over the years. The tale goes that the devil himself is said to have chosen this location as his resting place. The focal point of this belief is a particular tombstone within the churchyard, colloquially referred to as the Devil's Grave. And legend goes that disturbing the Devil's Grave could cause the Lord of Darkness himself to rise, inviting malevolent forces into the world. At number 6, we have another St. Mary's Church, this one in Clop Hill. If I were to conjure up an image in my mind of a haunted church, probably look exactly like this. This 14th century chapel fell into disuse in 1848, and over the years, it's gained a reputation for being a haunted site with possible satanic activity. During the 60s, evidence of disturbing activities surfaced when the church and its grounds were investigated. The walls of the chapel were found covered in graffiti, with occult symbols and ritualistic markings on it. Graves in the churchyard had been disturbed, pointing to possible disturbing activities taking place on the grounds. There are also urban legends associated with this place too. One legend goes that the church is haunted by the devil, mostly because of the orientation of the church altar. And traditionally, Christian churches are constructed to face the eastern direction, symbolizing the direction of the heavens and the anticipated coming of the Messiah. But in the case of St. Mary's Church, the altar faces the southern direction. The construction of St. Bartholomew the Great Church began in 1120, located in what is now West Smithfield. A monk and Norman courtier named Raher was responsible for receiving land and funds from King Henry I to build the church. There's a lot of history contained in St. Bart's, including some stories that are particularly dark. A number of homicides and executions took place on the grounds of the church, including the burning of heretics. And today, several resident ghosts and unnamed entities reside within the church walls. The Duke of Argyll, the painter William Hogarth, and the apparition of a priest have been seen in the church. There's also a white mist that appears in the center aisle of St. Bart's, and some reports indicate the mist forms into the shape of a woman. The positive energy is countered by a black mist that is also seen in the church and is thought to be residual negative energy of all the violence seen at St. Bart's. The church's most famous ghost, though, is Raher himself. The monk has been seen wandering the church, supposedly looking for his foot, which was allegedly stolen from his crypt centuries after his death. Why would someone take a foot? Give that back. That is not nice. Don't steal dead people's feet. It's also said that his ghost appears on the first day of every July at 7 a.m., so that's something. In 1918, a young woman was seen pacing the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, located at the corner of 3rd and Ormsby in Louisville, Kentucky. More than a century later, it said her ghost is still seen, pacing and sobbing during the night. This ghost is known as the Lady of the Stairs, or Miss G, which I love. It's believed that Miss G was a member of the prominent Gothrite family, and that her parents attempted to marry her to a much older man after she graduated from high school. But Miss G had already fallen in love with a young man who is currently fighting in World War I. After the war, the soldier, who is believed to be Herbert Fulton Dixon, returned to Louisville, and the young couple planned to leave town and get married in Chicago. That night, the night they were to leave, Miss G went to the steps of the First Church of Christ Scientist, where she and Dixon regularly met. Sadly, Dixon never showed up, and passerby saw a distressed Miss G pacing the steps of the church. As it turned out, Dixon had come down with the Spanish flu and was unable to make it to the church, but the news never made it to Miss G. In a matter of days, both Dixon and Miss G had died from the flu. Miss G's spirit has been seen on the church steps ever since. Sad. It was a sad world before cell phones, right? I got the flu, can't show up, please go home, get out of the cold. As the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe, the stunning York Minster is believed to date back to 627 AD. With a church that old, there are a number of hauntings associated with the church. One of the most famous is that during the 1820s, two ladies from a tour group going around the church found themselves separated and wandering around the building. They encountered a man in a naval uniform who approached one of the women and whispered in her ear. The story goes that he was the woman's brother, who had died at sea. The siblings had made a pact that whoever died first was to come back and tell the other if the afterlife existed. Another apparition said to haunt the York Minster is Dean Gale, who died in 1702, aged 26. He reportedly enjoys sitting in the pews and listening to the sermons. They sound like friendly ghosts, which is, alright. The Snagov Monastery in Romania. This island-bound church, the Snagov Monastery, seems perfect, but has a dark side. The church is the final resting place for one of the most notorious and bloodthirsty rulers of all time. Founded back in the 14th century, more than just one church has stood upon this island. The original wooden structure was doomed, eventually sinking into the surrounding lake, causing locals to believe the island was cursed. Eventually, this island was to become the resting place for, ladies and gentlemen, Vlad Tepes, better known as Vlad the Impaler, the real-life inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Vlad is said to be buried at the entrance to the church. There is a belief that Vlad had committed more atrocities in his life than any individual ever should, so he was placed at the church's entry so that anyone walking over his grave would have to take some of his sins upon themselves, which doesn't seem fair. There remains some mystery and debate whether Vlad is actually even buried at the church, but the monastery is still said to have ties to Vlad regardless, who had fortifications surrounding the island and a jail and torture chamber on the island itself. In a remote part of South Australia lies an artificial ghost town known as Old Talem Town. This attraction consists of many buildings, most of which are over 100 years old, that had been abandoned and then relocated to this town. There's a massive mix of history and dark events tied to many of these buildings, and some of them are considered to be, of course, haunted. One of the buildings that has gained a reputation for being possibly the most haunted building in Old Talem Town is its church. The Wolseley Methodist Church is feared as countless visitors to the building have claimed to have weird experiences. These include strange sensations, sighting shadow people, and even interacting with a young boy who was thought to have drowned on the property many years ago. Number 5, St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley. If that's not an English-sounding name, I don't know what is. Pluckley. Look at this spooky image here. I don't think it gets any more classically gothic horror than that either. St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley, as well as the town itself, is said to be very, very haunted. The church, dating back several centuries, has become known for its paranormal activity. Legend goes that the churchyard is haunted by various spirits. Visitors claim to have witnessed apparitions and strange occurrences in and around the church. Haunted occurrences range from ghostly figures to unexplained sounds. One of the most well-known spirits said to haunt the grounds is known as the Red Lady, who roams the church grounds at night in search of her stillborn child. Pluckley as a town has also earned quite the reputation, said to be the most haunted village in Britain. The village's population to ghost ratio is very out of whack. It's a small place, but it has 12 known ghosts roaming around it. And at number 4, we have Rouse Church. This is a 12th century sandstone church in the Czech Republic. It's adorned with a peculiar feature above its main entrance, a small stone face believed to depict the devil. The legend surrounding this traces back to the church's construction and involves a local troll. According to the lore, during the church's initial construction, a troublesome troll, one of those in the comments that keeps asking about people's hair. I wonder if this is him. Anyway, this troll, angered by the sound of church bells, consistently disrupted the building process by moving materials across a stream every night. Frustrated builders eventually abandoned the site altogether, choosing to build the church in its current location nearby. Still discontented, the troll decided to relocate 26 miles northwest to Kullaberg. There, the troll expressed a desire to return home, but claimed he was hindered by what he called the jingling gray mare, a reference to the church and its chiming bells, which he was too afraid to name directly. The church's distinctive stone head above the entrance is linked to this legend. There are 3 main theories about its origin. One goes that it represents Ra, the giant, credited with the church's construction, another associating with Roland, a medieval Christian knight, and the most prominent belief is that it portrays the devil. The idea here is that the devil's face is seen as a protective measure against trolls and malevolent beings. And at number 3, the Spectre of Newby Church. This image here is very famous, taken in 1963 by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord in the Church of Christ the Consoler, found on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire. Reverend Lord had been photographing the church. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but once he developed the pictures, he discovered a mysterious semi-translucent cloaked figure standing at the church altar. Reverend Lord claimed to be alone in the church at the time of taking the photo. The figure in the image looks a lot like a plague doctor or some malevolent type of spirit. It definitely doesn't look friendly, but skeptics quickly dismissed the photograph as a hoax, saying it was probably just double exposure or something. So Reverend Lord sent the photograph to experts to be examined, and according to their findings at the time, the photo showed no signs of tampering. Apparently, at least according to them, the image was genuine. And at number 2, we have Chernobyl Church. Pretty much any photo taken in Chernobyl is going to be eerie, given the context that it's the site of one of the worst nuclear disasters in history, but the abandoned church has to be one of the creepiest abandoned sites. That and the abandoned school probably takes second place. The church is beautiful, but looking at these images, it's hard not to have this strange feeling about it. Human beings are just designed to be a little uncomfortable in big, empty places where there should be people. Falls into that liminal spaces realm of horror. Plus, the church is in the middle, again, of Chernobyl, so apart from the harmful air, you have mutated animals and God knows what else lurking around. Imagine having to spend a whole night alone in this place with nothing but a sleeping bag and a flashlight. Would you do that for like $500? I'd consider it. If anyone wants to offer me like an e-transfer for $500 to like stay in one of these haunted places, I might consider it. That could be fun to film. Finally, though, we have St. George's Church in Czech Republic. This is what this abandoned church looks like now. Built in the 14th century, this Gothic marvel faced abandonment in the 1960s because of structural concerns. People had already thought the place was haunted, but then the roof literally caved in on the place during mass one day, which certainly didn't make people feel any less uneasy about going into the place. Over the years, the church was broken into, vandalized, and robbed. Believing the place was culturally significant, artist Jacob Hadrava stepped in with a unique vision to breathe some life into the decaying church. Instead of the usual restoration, he populated the place, all the empty pews, with ghostly sculptures crafted from plaster. And these eerie figures now sit in this sacred place, frozen in a congregation that blurs the line between art and the supernatural. Stories of a haunting atmosphere within this church still persist today. Some claim to sense an otherworldly presence as they explore the dimly lit space with whispers of ghostly apparitions and unexplained sounds. And we're starting things off with David Berkowitz, aka the son of Sam. One peculiar aspect of his case was his claim that his neighbor's dog was possessed and instructed him to commit violent acts. In the mid-1970s, Berkowitz carried out a string of shootings. He was eventually arrested in 1977, and during the investigation, he admitted to the shootings and claimed that his neighbor's dog, a black Labrador retriever named Harvey, was possessed by a demon. According to Berkowitz, Harvey commanded him to take the lives of people. Berkowitz later asserted that he had started the fires in the Bronx, attributing this act to the dog's influence as well. In 1978, Berkowitz pleaded guilty to the crimes and was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences in prison. He later renounced his satanic beliefs and became involved in prison ministry, offering counseling and support to other inmates. And at number 9, we have Sean Sellers. He was a self-proclaimed Satanist who claimed to be possessed by a demon named Azaret. In 1985, at the age of 16, Sellers took the lives of his parents, Vonda and Paul, in their Oklahoma home. He later confessed to these acts, as well as having shot a convenience store clerk a year prior who refused to sell him beer. Sellers stated that his involvement in Satanism influenced his actions. According to Sellers, he believed he was possessed by the demon, which drove him to commit the violent acts. And Sellers was eventually arrested, tried, and convicted for the crimes. He was sentenced to death in 1986, and during his time on death row, he became a born-again Christian and renounced his previous involvement in Satanism, but despite his change in beliefs and multiple appeals, Sellers was executed by lethal injection in 1999. Next up is Manuela and Daniel Ruda, two lovers bound together by their passion for violence in the name of the Dark Lord. How romantic. Manuela and Daniel Ruda were a German couple involved in a highly disturbing incident in 2001. They were responsible for the death of Frank Hackert, and their reason for taking their friend's life? Well, according to the couple at the time, they thought he was so funny and would be the perfect court jester for Satan. The Rudas were deeply immersed in occult practices, spending time vacationing in England and Scotland, sleeping in graveyards, and going to devil-worshipping parties. The couple subjected Hackert to hours of violent rituals, which tragically led to his demise. After taking Hackert's life, they stuck his body in a coffin that they used as a coffee table. They attempted to dismember his body, but they were apprehended before they could dispose of the remains. They were actually caught in a gas station station, and apparently they were brandishing chainsaws, like waiting for the authorities to arrive. Very insane. In 2002, they were both convicted of the crime, with Daniel receiving a prison sentence and Manuela being committed to a psychiatric institution because of her diminished mental state. She cut her ties with Daniel when he was in prison though, and he landed himself in court once again years later when he apparently attempted to hire a hitman to take her out. True love at its finest. As insane as all this is, using a coffin for a coffee table, that is actually an awesome idea. I am taking note of that. Nikolai Ogolbiak. This next case happened in 2008 in Russia. It's pretty disturbing. Nikolai was a former choir boy turned Satanist and led a small cult of Satan worshippers. He and a few of his underlings lured 4 teenagers in the local goth scene into the woods about 300 miles northeast of Moscow, where they forced them to drink alcohol before stabbing them 666 times each. After that, they ate parts of their victims' bodies. The group was arrested when various body parts were found in Nikolai's apartment complex. One member was quoted saying, "Satan will help me avoid responsibility. I made many sacrifices to him." Another said, "I tried to turn to God, but it didn't bring me any money. I prayed to Satan and things improved." They didn't improve that much because now you're in prison, but yeah. Number 6. The Beasts of Satan. The members of the Beasts of Satan were primarily young individuals in the metal scene in Soma, Lombardo, Italy. They shared an interest in Satanism and the occult, and they believed in ritualistic practices influenced by the darker aspects of satanic worship. One night in January of 1998, after hanging out at Midnight Pub listening to heavy metal music, 3 members, Andrea Volpe, Nicola Sapone, and Mario Muccione, lured 2 of their friends out into the woods and took their lives in a ritualistic sacrifice. They buried their bodies in the woods and then danced on their graves chanting, "Now you're both zombies, try to get out of this hole if you dare." Might have sounded catchier in Italian. The group got away with this initially. Authorities didn't look into the 2 teens' disappearances because they were a couple, and police were like, "Oh yeah, they probably ran off together." Great policing work. Then in 2004, the group's leader, Andre Volpe, took the life of his ex-girlfriend, believing she knew too much about the incident from 7 years prior. Then he and his buddy buried the body before taking a large amount of drugs, crashing their car into a tree. The 2 were arrested, and during interrogations, everything came out.
Number 5. TikTok doctor. Once, a man who was pronounced dead by his doctor after being injured said that rather than seeing a bright light and the feeling of coming home, he instead saw hell itself and met the devil. A doctor took to TikTok to explain that he encountered a young man in his early 20s who had been stabbed in the heart after being involved in a deal that went wrong. Not willing to let the man die, medical staff took the victim into surgery, kept him from losing too much blood, and treated the wound in his heart. The doctor remembers the man waking up 4 hours later and crying, claiming that he went straight down to hell and looked straight in the eyes of the devil. The man said he could see the doctors working to save his life, and having never prayed before, gave it a try, at which point an angel pulled him back up out of hell. Remembering how clear the man had been, the doctor said it was the most amazing experience because he was legit. I mean, nobody makes up an experience like that. The last I heard, he's completely changed his life, he gave his life to God, and I still to this day, the look in his eyes when he woke up, the terror, I'm absolutely convinced he did meet the devil. Number 4. Working for the devil. Gilles de Rais was originally hailed a hero of France for his role in the 100 Years' War, a time during which he served as a comrade in arms to Joan of Arc, but the nobleman Gilles de Rais lived a secret, gruesome second life where he enjoyed ending the lives of people who couldn't defend themselves. In September 1440, de Rais was arrested after an almost decade-long spree in which he may have ended the lives of over 140 victims. During his trial, both de Rais and several of his servants/accomplices confessed to their evil deeds. Besides ending people's lives, he also admitted to engaging in Satanism by reportedly summoning the devil and his demonic minions. While the nobleman refused to sell his soul, he offered the blood and organs of his victims in exchange for knowledge and power over the dark arts. Number 3. God wanted her to see hell. Josefa Menendez was a young Spanish sister who had a short religious life of great suffering and experienced many revelations throughout her life. More than once she was taken to hell to witness and feel the suffering firsthand. Sister Josefa was reluctant to write on the subject of hell and did so only to conform to her Lord's wishes. She wrote about her experiences in her journal, and she described it as the greatest torment of hell, namely the soul's inability to love. She wrote, "One of these damned souls cried out, 'This is my torture, that I want to love and cannot. There is nothing left me but hatred and despair. If one of us could so much as make a single act of love, but we cannot, we live on hatred." As mentioned, she went to hell multiple times, but one time she saw the devil. She wrote, "Souls were crying out and the devil answered, 'Insinuate yourselves by including carelessness in them, but keep in the background so that you are not found out. Tempt these others into ambition, into self-interest, to acquiring wealth without working, whether it be lawful or not." That entry was from February 3rd, 1923. She visited hell many times after that, but didn't report on seeing the devil again. And that sounds absolutely terrifying. Number 2. In a coma. Will Carroll is a drummer who has been in the band Death Angel since 2009 and has provided the drum tracks for their last 4 studio albums. After spending nearly 2 weeks in a coma fighting Will revealed that during his battle with the virus, he saw the afterlife, where he would be sent to hell and meet Satan. The illness left him in a critical state where he was put on a ventilator while lying unconscious in a California Pacific Medical Center hospital bed for 12 days before recovering. He said that the devil would punish him for the deadly sin of sloth. The musician said Satan would transform him into a creature similar to that of Star Wars' Jabba the Hutt, and that he would vomit blood until he ultimately had a heart attack. Will told the San Francisco Chronicle that what he went through allowed him to change some of his typical lifestyle habits, including his once heavy alcohol and illegal substance use. "I'm also going to listen to satanic metal though," he joked, but he later admitted that after beating COVID-19, he doesn't think Satan's quite as cool as he used to. And coming up at number 1, The Devil Made Me Do It. Sound familiar? It's because the third Conjuring movie has the same title. This film is inspired by the real events that took place with Arnie Johnson. Ed and Lorraine Warren were helping exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks had appeared on his neck afterwards. David had started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. They did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. During his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Arnie then coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating in one of David's exorcisms. Afterwards, Arnie's personality changed. He would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, his and his girlfriend Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, so Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine Warren informed the Brookfield police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went on to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and the devil made me do it. The jury deliberated for 15 hours over 3 days before convicting Ernie of first-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, though he only served 5. Number 10. The Violinist. It's been long said that successful artists have made a deal with the devil, and this has been going on for hundreds of years. An Italian violinist named Giuseppe Tartini claimed the devil appeared to him in a dream and played for him the most incredible piece of music he had ever heard. Here is how he described the experience. "One night in the year 1713, I dreamed I had made a pact with the devil for my soul. Everything went as I wished. My new servant anticipated my every desire. Among other things, I gave him my violin to see if he could play. How great was my astonishment on hearing a sonata so wonderful and so beautiful, played with such great art and intelligence as I had ever even conceived in my boldest flights of fantasy. Upon waking, Giuseppe tried to recreate it, and that became his magnum opus, known as the Devil's Trill Sonata." Number 9. Exorcism Gone Wrong. In 1997, Father Gabriel Amorth conducted his exorcisms in Rome, and he asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man he was dealing with began to curse and spit, and started using English instead of his native Italian. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Father Gabriel said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. He said, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, you? Tell me your name, the day and the hour of your damnation." The man fixed him with a glare, snarled, and said, "I am Lucifer." Father Gabriel was shocked. He did not expect to receive such a terrifying response. The father mostly used prayers as his weapon, reciting verses of liberation from the Roman rite of exorcism. As Father Gabriel continually commanded the demon to leave the host, it eventually left, but my goodness, that sounds absolutely terrifying. Number 8. Witch trials. Sarah Good was one of the first 3 women to be accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials, which occurred in 1692 in Massachusetts. On March 25th, 1692, Sarah was tried for witchcraft, and when she was brought in, the accusers immediately began to rock back and forth and moan, seemingly in response to Sarah's presence. Later in the trial, one of the accusers fell into a fit. Now, Sarah denied the allegations against her, but another woman on trial admitted to being the devil's servant. She stated that a tall man dressed in all black came to them, demanding they sign their names in a great book. Although initially refusing, she eventually wrote her name after Sarah, and another woman forced her to. When Sarah was allowed the chance to defend herself in front of the 12 jurors in the Salem Village Meeting House, she argued her innocence, proclaiming that the other 2 were the real witches. In the end, however, Sarah was convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to death. So, did she really meet the devil, or was she innocent? Who knows? Number 7. Strayed from the path. This is the testimony of Jennifer Perez, who was brought up in a Christian home. She strayed from that path, got into drugs, died, and was sent to hell. Fortunately, she was given a second chance, but this is her story. She was in the hospital and her spirit woke up, but her body didn't. As a spirit, 2 men dressed in red approached her and told her to come with them. She went to heaven and saw the Lord and 2 angels, Gabriel and Michael. She and Gabriel went through a black door, and it was dark and they were falling. The farther they fell, the hotter it was, and she said it smelled like sulfur. They got to the bottom and she realized that she was in hell, seeing people being tortured by various demons. The cries and torture scared her, and then she saw a massive red creature in the middle of it all, just watching everything. She assumed that this was the devil, and it terrified her. After this, she then ascended back to heaven and was asked for a second chance. She then woke up in the hospital, alive, and devoted the rest of her life to God. Number 6. Mom met the devil. A user on Reddit posted this story about the time their mother met the devil. They said, "My mom told me a story of when she met the devil. She was in high school, she had a friend who was dating an older man. He was probably 20 to 30 years older than her, and he gave her a necklace. Not wanting to get caught by her parents, she gave the necklace to my mom. She wore it, and that night when my mom slept, she dreamt of a man. Clean cut and handsome, but disturbingly evil. She said all she knew about the man was that he was pure evil. He came up to her face, eyes locked on her, stone cold and expressionless, reached for her neck and grabbed the necklace from her neck and twirled it in a circle in the air like a witch's pendant. She jolted awake and couldn't feel the necklace, and in a panic she looked all around for the necklace and found it under her pillow in a perfect spiral."
Next on the list is Ricky Queso. In 1984, Ricky Queso, a teenager from Northport, New York, took the life of his friend Gary Lowers. On June 16th, 1984, Queso and a group of friends, who were all part of a group they called the Knights of the Black Circle, lured Lowers to a remote wooded area. There, a confrontation ensued, during which Queso and his accomplices subjected Lowers to a drawn-out beating. Queso apparently tried to force Lowers into praising Satan. Lowers refused, though, repeating that he loved his mother. The entire group was high on psychedelic drugs at the time. Queso would then brag about the incident to his friends days afterwards, claiming that Satan had appeared to him in the form of a black crow. When it cawed, he interpreted it as Satan giving his approval of the attack. This was at the height of the satanic panic in the US, and Queso's fascination with satanic rituals and the occult, and the fact that he was wearing an AC/DC t-shirt when he was arrested, it all became the focal point in the media coverage of the case. And shortly after the incident, Queso was arrested and charged in connection with Lowers' demise. And before he could stand trial, though, he took his own life in his jail cell on July 7th of 84. Number 4, the Ripper Crew. The Ripper Crew was a notorious satanic cult active in Chicago during the 80s, comprising of 4 members: Robert Gett, Edward Spritzer, and brothers Andrew and Thomas Cocorellis. They carried out a series of heinous crimes, abducting and taking the lives of several women in the area. They followed this twisted version of Satanism, using it as a justification for their violent acts. Their leader, Robin Gett, allegedly believed that offering human sacrifices to Satan, he would then gain supernatural powers and protection. The Ripper Crew targeted young women. They abducted their victims, subjected them to brutal torment, and then took their lives as part of their ritualistic practices. In 82, the police arrested Robin Gett. During his interrogation, he confessed to several crimes and provided information about the cult's activities, and this led to the arrest and conviction of the other members, including Edward Spritzer and the Cocorellis brothers. But it's essential to I want to say, their actions aren't really representative of mainstream Satanism. I think that this goes for everyone on this list. In real life, Satanism really is not about promoting violence. Anyway, in 83, Robin Gett was sentenced to 120 years in prison. Edward Spritzer and Andrew Cocorellis were sentenced to death, with Spritzer later receiving a life sentence after Illinois temporarily banned the death penalty, and Thomas Cocorellis was actually released from prison in 2019 for some reason. Next on the list, we have Krista Pike. In January 1995, Krista Gale Pike, who was 18 at the time, along with 2 accomplices, Shadola Peterson and Tadariel Shipp, Pike's boyfriend, were involved in a gruesome incident that claimed the life of classmate Colleen Slemmer. Pike had a disturbing interest in Satanism and the occult, and carried out the act in a particularly disturbing manner. So it all started when Slemmer seemed to be talking to her boyfriend a little too much for Krista's liking, so she formed a plan with Shipp and Peterson to take Slemmer out of the picture. The trio lured Slemmer to a vacant steam plant where they violently attacked her. They beat her for 30 minutes, cut her up, even carved a pentagram into her chest. In 1996, Krista Pike was convicted of her role in the event, and despite her young age, was sentenced to death. She's currently still on death row. Number 2, Richard Ramirez, or as he became known, the Night Stalker, one of the most notorious criminals in American history. Ramirez was heavily influenced by Satanism, and he often left satanic symbols at the scenes of his crimes. He was known to draw pentagrams on the walls and leave occult objects behind. Ramirez believed that he was protected by dark forces and that Satan guided his actions. During 84 and 85, Ramirez took the lives of at least 13 people in Southern California. His victims, ranging in age from 9 to 83, were subjected to brutal attacks, and in some cases, he would also burglarize the people's homes. He would also force many of his victims to profess their love for Satan. Unlike a lot of criminals of his kind who typically have a specific pattern to the types of people they'll victimize, Ramirez was more unpredictable. His victims were almost entirely random. Men, women, young, old, didn't matter to him. Now, the way this all ends is probably the most cathartic I've heard in any notorious criminal case like this. In 1985, Ramirez was chased down by residents in East Los Angeles after they recognized him from news coverage. An angry mob formed and Ramirez was just romped on until police showed up. It's like the ending of Frankenstein or something, only Ramirez actually deserved what he got. He was unarrested, tried, and convicted. He died in 2013 while on death row in San Quentin. Finally, we have Adolfo Constanzo. This guy was a cult leader, a drug trafficker, and he also practiced black magic. Man was just looking at the villain menu, was like, yep, I'll have that. I'll take that. Might as well check that off as well. He was the mastermind behind a criminal organization involved in drug trafficking, and he would take victims' lives in these spooky, dark rituals. He believed that performing human sacrifices would grant him supernatural powers and protect his drug trafficking operations. Cult members followed his twisted beliefs without question, basically the definition of a cult. The cult's rituals often involved human sacrifice. Victims were often abducted or lured and then died in ceremonies aimed at appeasing deities and spirits. Their bodies were dismembered and body parts were used in the rituals. In 1989, Constanzo's criminal activities began to unravel when Mexican authorities discovered the cult's headquarters in Matamoros, Mexico, and there they found evidence of the cult's rituals, including human remains and ritualistic artifacts. house. There was this big witches type cauldron with a dead black cat and a human brain inside of it. Doesn't seem real. Constanzo and 4 of his followers fled, but were eventually tracked down by the police, and Constanzo didn't want to be taken alive, and so he ordered one of his followers to shoot him, and that was the end of that.
Coming in at number 10 is Mr. Alguin. Ethan Alguin posted online a story that he was told. The story goes, "My grandpa believes he saw the devil. When my dad was a kid, my grandpa used to work at a graveyard. He would get up as it was dark, and within a few hours of working, the sun would come up. One morning, he did what he always had done and got ready for work. As he was walking there, he saw a man in a suit just walking slowly down the street. My grandpa told him something along the lines of, 'May the Lord give you a good morning,' and the guy ignored him and kept walking. My grandpa just ignored it and went to the graveyard as he always had and proceeded to work. After a few hours of work, the sun hadn't started rising yet, and he realized how early he actually woke up, so he went back home. He told my grandma about the guy, and she believes it was something called El Catrin. Apparently, sometimes the devil appears as a very well-dressed person that they refer to as El Catrin. Creepy." Number 9. Johann Georg Forst. This 16th century German astrologer and alchemist was an intelligent and successful man, but this wasn't enough for him. He wanted supreme power and knowledge, so he called upon the devil to provide him with it in return for his soul. For 16 years, he enjoyed his newfound power before he attempted to back out of the agreement. However, the devil convinced him to renew the pact, knowing that upon his death, Johann's soul would reside for eternity in hell. After 24 long years, the devil announced to Johann that his death was approaching. A huge explosion was heard from Johann's room that night, which was believed to be the act of Satan reclaiming his soul. The only thing remaining from the eruption was bits and pieces of Johann's body. Number 8. Sarah Good. Sarah Good was one of the first 3 women to be accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials, which occurred in 1692 in Massachusetts. On March 25th, 1692, Sarah was tried for witchcraft. When she was brought in, the accusers immediately began to rock back and forth and moan, seemingly in response to Sarah's presence. Later in the trial, one of the accusers fell into a fit. Sarah denied the allegations against her, but another woman on trial admitted to being the devil's servant. She stated that a tall man dressed in all black came to them, demanding they sign their names in a great book. Although initially refusing, she eventually wrote her name after Sarah and another woman forced her to. When Sarah was allowed the chance to defend herself in front of the 12 jurors in the Salem Village meeting house, she argued her innocence, proclaiming the other 2 as real witches. In the end, however, Sarah was convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to death. So, did she really see the devil, or was she innocent? Who knows? Number 7. North Berwick Witches. The North Berwick witch trials were in 1590, where a number of people from East Lothian, Scotland were accused of witchcraft. The trials ran for 2 years and implicated over 70 people. The witches allegedly held their covens on the Aled Green, part of the modern-day North Berwick Harbour area. One source for the events is a 1591 pamphlet news from Scotland. King James VI wrote a dissertation on witchcraft and necromancy titled Demonology in 1597. More than 100 suspected witches were arrested, and several confessed under torture to having met with the devil in the church at night and devoted themselves to doing evil, including poisoning the king and other members of his household and attempting to sink the king's ship. Number 6. Andy Berthrin. One day, Andy decided to make a deal with the devil, like someone does. He said, "My family loved God more than me, and I had a teenage reaction and decided to go my own way. I thought I'd make an actual pact with the devil, and the pact went along the lines of, you get me this, and I'll give you my life." He took me at my word, and it was a very conscious decision that I will always regret. Eventually, Andy restored his faith in Christianity, but while Andy acknowledges Jesus' power is not even comparable to Satan's, he says, the devil was not going to let him go easily. He was attacked spiritually, but not just verbally, but physically as well. He said, "There were images and voices. I spent night after night praying against apparitions and stuff all around me all the time. It's a reality. Some people still won't believe it happens, but it does. I clearly remember an elder suggesting I go and pray and read my Bible. I picked up my Bible and it was like someone stabbed me in the eye, and it burned so much until I put the Bible down, then it would stop."
Did someone capture a shadow person on camera lurking over their bed? This video comes from Carrie E on YouTube, who noticed something terrifying on her home smart camera. Clearly, there's this dark black shape standing in the corner of the room. And, at first I didn't really think much of this. I mean, it's not hard to put on some dark clothes and lurk in a corner, but then it moves, and that's when you notice just how unnatural this thing really is. It zips across the room so fast, and in such a smooth, unnatural motion. This is clearly not a person. On top of that, watch how blurry it becomes. It doesn't look like a solid mass anymore. If you've ever had sleep paralysis and felt like something was standing over you or sitting on your chest and restricting your breathing, well, this video probably ain't gonna help you sleep any better, so sorry about that. Did you ever have an imaginary friend growing up? Do you have pleasant memories of said imaginary friend? Well, this next story may make you look back on your childhood a little differently. This photo here was shared online years ago. It looks pretty innocuous, 2 kids playing, but the thing is, there was only one youngster present at the time. At least that's what the parents thought. They were watching their son playing in the living room, saying he was talking with his imaginary friend Pauline. Dad snapped a picture, and when they looked back at it, they nearly screamed. Something else was clearly in the room, at least the camera picked something up. And the closer you look at this mysterious figure, the creepier it becomes. The eyes, the smile. Not only does it look unnatural, it has this air of aggression about it. Pretty creepy photo. So this happened back in January in Texas, just outside of Dallas. 2 homeowners were left terrified after someone showed up at their house wearing a red satanic mask and holding a cardboard sign that said Revelation 21:15. If you know that Bible passage, it's all about the apocalypse, judgment day, that kind of thing. So the devil mask is bad enough, but it's really not the message you want showing up right on your front porch. The whole thing was caught on their doorbell camera. It happened around 8 p.m. on a Saturday. You could see the person dressed in all black standing there a few feet from the door, completely still. They ring the doorbell, wait a few seconds, then knock, and when no one answers, they just walk around the side of the house and stand there in the driveway, still holding the sign. The homeowners were not home at the time. They'd gone out to dinner, but they saw the footage later and they freaked out. "I'm scared," the homeowner told CBS. "I'm scared to leave the house. I'm scared to be at the house." She also said, "It's about the end times. It's about Judgment Day. I freaked out." Police looked into it and said the masked person hadn't been seen at any other homes in the area and technically didn't commit a crime. Still, they said they'd keep an eye on the neighborhood just in case. And a little message to viewers here. Probably not the best idea to knock on some random person's door wearing a devil mask in Texas. Yeah, I don't know about that. Anyway, just what kind of animal are we looking at here? According to the uploader, it wasn't an animal. At least, not one he'd ever seen. Reddit user Corrine James posted the image along with a description reading, "EMT friend saw this 2 nights ago, turning his ambulance around at the end of a rural road. It was swaying and its eyes were glowing without the headlights. This was in central Kentucky." Now, interesting thing about Kentucky, it's the home of the Pope Lick monster, aka Goatman. So, a terrifying part man, part goat hybrid with glowing red eyes. I don't know, am I drawing the wrong connections here? Am I crying? I don't know, but what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments.
Number 5. Father Gabriel Amorth. In 1997, Father Gabriel Amorth conducted his exorcisms in Rome, and he asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man he was dealing with began to curse and spit and started using English instead of his native Italian. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Father Gabriel said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. He said, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day, and the hour of your damnation." The man fixed him with a glare, snarled, and said, "I am Lucifer." Father Gabriel was shocked. He did not expect to receive such a terrifying response. He mostly used prayer as his weapon, reciting verses of liberation from the Roman rite of exorcism. As Father Gabriel continually commanded the demon to leave its host, it eventually left. But my goodness, that sounds absolutely horrifying. Number 4. the circus. In this story, this man's father told his son about the day he met the devil. It took place in Juarez, Mexico in the year 1942 when his father was 20 years old. The circus had arrived in town and the man's father and his younger brother went to check it out, and they ran into a short, stubby man wearing a dinner jacket. This stranger introduced himself and said he auditioned for a job at the circus, but the owner turned him down because his act was so frightening that the owner accused him of being the devil. They asked if they could see the trick, and he said yes, but they would have to come to the trailer where he lives. They went to the stranger's place, and he put on a cape and a white glove on his right hand. He started running his left hand over, under, and around his gloved right hand, all while closing and opening his right hand and wiggling his fingers. The stranger then started chanting some strange words in another language. Then he grabbed the tip of the white glove and removed his glove. His hand was gone. It was all bones from his skeleton. The brothers ran out scared, and the stranger stood at the top of the steps, just smiling. Then on the ground was a wooden plank with long nails pointing up. The stranger jumped off the steps and landed right on those nails. They went right through his shoes and blood started to flow. The man's father stood there transfixed as the stranger started to laugh again while pointing at the man's father with his bony finger. They ran away again, and the man's father knew that it was the devil, and they were grateful to be able to escape. Number 3. Alex Bedsoe. Alex Bedsoe saw the devil in 1973 when they were 10 years old. Apparently, the devil was arrested and in a jail cell, so Alex went with a man named Tater to see it. Tater had a beat up truck, and he had claimed to have shaken the devil's hand. When Andy got there, he saw the cell windows and only one cell had its lights on. He said, "I could only see the plaster ceiling, then a shadow moved across it. The shadow stopped, it was in the shape of a human head, except 2 small horns rose from it. Then suddenly the head was standing at the window, looking out into the night, looking, I was certain, right at me. I could only see it from the nose up, and because the light was behind it, I could make out no facial details. But the horn seemed to be jet black, and the hairless head was in fact a deep, dark red." The next day, people in the trailer park talked about nothing else. The county sheriff came to get him about 1 in the morning, but there wasn't nobody in the cell. Everybody figured it was some kind of joke played by the pastor. I never asked about that night, and as I grew older, I accepted that the suggestion hovering in the hot summer air had worked on my child's brain and conjured what I thought I'd seen. Except for one thing. About a week afterwards, Hader started driving around in a new truck. I mean brand new, a 1975 Chevy Blazer with 4-wheel drive and a camper shell. Lots of people asked where he'd gotten the money for it, since otherwise his lifestyle didn't change. For me, the source of the new truck was plain as day, and the proof, it was painted red. Devil red. Number 2. Jennifer Perez. This is the testimony of a 15-year-old girl who was brought up in a Christian home. She strayed from that path, got into drugs, died, and was sent to hell. Fortunately, she was given a second chance, but this is her story. She was in the hospital and her spirit woke up, but her body didn't. As a spirit, 2 men dressed in red approached her and told her to come with them. She then went to heaven and saw the Lord and 2 angels, Gabriel and Michael. She and Gabriel went through a black door and it was dark and they were falling. The farther they fell, the hotter it was, and it smelled like sulfur. She was in hell, and she was seeing people being tortured by various demons. The cries and torture scared her. She then saw a massive red creature in the middle of it all that was just watching everything. She assumed that was the devil and it terrified her. She then ascended back to heaven and was asked for a second chance. She then woke up in the hospital, alive, and devoted her life to God. And coming in at number 1 is Sister Josefa Mendez. This young Spanish sister, who had a short religious life of great suffering, experienced revelations throughout much of her life. More than once, she was taken to hell to witness and feel the suffering firsthand. Sister Josefa was reluctant to write on the subject of hell, and did so only to conform to her Lord's wishes. She wrote about her experiences in her journal. Sister Josefa described it as the greatest torment of hell, namely was the soul's inability to love. She wrote, "One of these damned souls cried out, 'This is my torture, that I want to love and cannot. There's nothing left in me but hatred and despair. If one of us could so much as make a single act of love, but we cannot, we live on hatred.'" As mentioned, she went to hell multiple times, but one time she saw the devil. She wrote, "Souls were crying out and the devil answered. forward. Insinuate yourselves by inducing carelessness in them, but keep in the background so that you are not found out. Tempt these others with ambition, to self-interest, to acquiring wealth without working, whether it be lawful or not. That entry was from February 3rd, 1923. She visited hell many times after that, but didn't report on seeing the devil again. Coming in at number 10 is meditation. On April 13th, 2022, Stephanie Hosemeyer replied to the question online that read, "Have you accidentally summoned a demon?" She replied by saying, "Yes, I did. Wow, what a mistake. I think I was just meditating with these stones a friend gave me for watching her dogs for her. They were polished stones in a medicine bag. So I was holding 4 in each hand and kinda just letting my mind wander when I got slammed in the back and saw white stars in my head. I heard demonic laughter and a bunch of banging upstairs. I blew out my candle and fled the house. When I went back, the house seemed okay, but that night I saw shadow crawlers all over the walls and poltergeist activities began. I heard children laughing when my kids were at school. Things came up missing to be found where I already looked. I saw a figure in the hallway so many times I put my hand out to not run into him. And my luck was so bad, it still is. We fled that house in the night and burned it down." Number 9. School summoning. Now, according to legend, one cold night in the early 1600s, a group of schoolboys were naively dabbling in arcane magic when, by some terrible ritual using mere bread and sticks, they summoned Satan himself from the flames of the fireplace. Now, the terrified boys sought desperately to send the Prince of Darkness back to where he had come from, but to no avail. They then tried to hide their mistake, however, realizing this might not go away as easily as their other mistakes, they needed help. The boys hurried for the schoolmaster, old Mr. Hodgson, who already well knew something was awry after his ensorcelled trencher had begun to spin by some necromantic spell. The schoolmaster hurried at once to confront the evil intruder, whom he found smugly awaiting him. Tauntingly, Satan called out to the schoolmaster, "Ye know the bargain, thou hast 3 chances to defeat me in battle of wits, or else thy soul is mine for eternity." Now, the wise schoolmaster challenged his adversary to first count all the blades of grass on the castle croft. In a flash of smoke, the devil hurried away to the banks of the Irwell near Bury Castle and completed the task in less than an hour. The schoolmaster then challenged him to count all the grains of sand on the school brow, but in this too the devil succeeded. For his final task, the undaunted and steady schoolmaster challenged Satan to count all the letters in the parish church's large Bible. After daring that too would prove easy, Satan made his way to the nearby church, and upon finding the leather-bound book on the pulpit, he heaved open the cover. At once, however, the words on the ancient vellum began to dance and blur before his eyes, and he knew that he had been beaten. Enraged, Satan departed back into the fireplace, and with a deafening crack, a large fissure appeared in the stone. To this day, the devil's stone remains visible and now sits under a clock. Number 8. 2 demons. A Reddit user said they contacted Lilith and Lucifer. When asked what happened, they said, "You can feel their presence. When I summoned Lilith, she lightly had her energy around my neck, and I felt heavy weight on my body. She whispered to me, and I spoke to her, asked my parents' names, and she knew them. Treat Lilith like a mother, and don't take her lightly." Lucifer I summoned, and near the end of the summoning, I got past the fear stage where he kept putting the image of a skinwalker in my head, and then I made a deal with him in a white room, and his face was concealed to join the 1006 and to have my demands done after I wrote a letter to him. Number 7. Lasting effects. This Reddit user made a post called "I summoned a demon successfully." They said, "So tonight I was speaking a mantra to Amen for the first time. I did for about 10 minutes. I've always been somewhat of a critic of it all, and nothing happened for the first 2 hours. About an hour ago to writing this, I was watching a video and had one earbud out and one in. I heard a growl with my ear that didn't have an earbud in it. Directly after, I got and still am completely ice cold and have goosebumps. It currently feels like someone is watching me, observing. I've absolutely never felt these kind of things before, just felt almost like a pinch on my left foot, and it is surrounding like there's movement coming from my kitchen. Am I angering it by sharing this? Oh my gosh, writing that question gave me a headache. It's going on and off, the pain. It's now the morning after, and I had extremely weird vivid dreams, which I may have like 1 to 2 times a month, and I had around 4 I can recall. The most interesting, while frightening one, considered me and a friend driving somewhere I'd never seen before. We got out of our car along with everyone else for some reason. Suddenly, it began raining in one specific spot in the middle of a bunch of trees. Immediately after, a volcano rose up from the ground in the distance and started spewing hellfire everywhere. The last moment I remember was fiery skies masked in smoke. I mean, it really felt like I was in hell. Number 6. Using prayer. This online user shared their story by saying, "I admit that I stupidly tried summoning a demon. Mostly, however, to have fun. I didn't think a demon would answer my call. Oh, and hell they did. Within a matter of months, I was hearing birds talk to me. I thought I was crazy, but I checked in with many doctors, but they couldn't seem to figure it out. As it turns out, after checking with the pastor, we certainly were having demon problems. Dang, and these demons are not easy to get around either. They are tricky and sneaky, and the only way I lived through this was by prayer."
Alright, so this video comes from a TikToker named Anelli_RG. Her actual name is Mariana. She took the footage at her church in Mexico. According to her, she always felt a strange, unsettling vibe whenever she was there. Nothing specific she could point to, just a general sense that something wasn't right. So one day she decided to record during Mass to see if she could capture anything unusual on camera, and she did. When she reviewed the footage, she noticed someone or something that she doesn't remember seeing in person at all. It stands out immediately. In her description, she said it wasn't a human, and honestly, it's hard to disagree. The figure looks pale with dark, almost hollow eyes, almost like some lifeless mask. It's not just a case of bad camera quality either. Everyone else in the shot looks completely normal. So what's going on with this ghoulish looking figure? What would you do if you were working overnight security and saw this person show up on your surveillance camera? I say person, but I mean, look at her, it looks more like a zombie to me. So, at a school in Mexico, this security guard was on an overnight shift when he looked at the surveillance camera by the entrance of the building and saw this unsettling looking person staring up at the camera trying to get inside. The glowing eyes, the unusually long looking arms, this is not what I would want to see trying to break into my workplace in the middle of the night. Again, I'd think a zombie invasion was breaking out. This image was posted to Reddit by Dystopia321, who wrote, "This is a camera set up in the woods. Set up to take photos when it senses movement. Main purpose is to take photos of deer and other wildlife. There were no people that could be in the woods at the time, and it had to have been moving to set off the camera. What is this?" Well, I can't say exactly what it is, but I can say it doesn't look good. A rake, a skinwalker, wendigo, golem. All possible identities mentioned in the comments, and I don't know, those seem like good guesses to me. What a horrifying looking creature. Could it be some extra tall, thin, pale person skulking through the forest alone in the middle of the night? Sure. But that's not really a comforting thought either, is it? What do you all think of this one? This one legitimately gave me chills, because it took me a few seconds staring at the image before I saw it, but when I did, yeah, just no thank you. Reddit user OrangeFood87 shared the picture saying that back in 2012, their roommate received the image from her boyfriend. He was working at a body shop after hours and snapped a photo of this totaled car that had just been brought into the shop. He was alone at the time and didn't see the eerie figure until he looked back at the photo. Apparently, he closed up early that night, and I can't say I blame him. This picture was taken at the South Pittsburgh Hospital by Reddit user JustOkayAtLife, who wrote, "Taken in the second-story shadow hall where they report a 7-foot-tall shadow figure. This was taken at the end of the night. There was one other guy with me, and he was in front of me to the left. He had the flashlight, so there's no way this shadow was either of ours. If you have a chance and you happen to be in Tennessee, I highly recommend visiting this place. Earlier in the night, I was walking down a dark hallway alone on the first floor, and from the left side of me, there was a doorway where I heard a hissing sound shoot out of one of the rooms, moving towards me. It was an incredible experience. Incredible experience, that's one way of putting it. Our final clip today comes from Saudi Arabia. YouTuber Adventures Jassim79 was doing what he does best, exploring a creepy abandoned place. This time he was walking through an old rundown house, and when he got to the roof, he caught something incredibly chilling on camera. As he passes by a clothesline, through a small opening between sheets, this ghoulish face with pure black eyes appears. Just as fast as it shows up though, it thankfully vanishes. Yeah, I'd be praying too if I saw that face poking out at me. Seeing as this is in Saudi Arabia, many viewers have commented that this could be more than just a ghost, but a jinn. Spirit-like beings from Muslim tradition that can be invisible, shapeshift, and sometimes exhibit a more classical kind of demonic behavior, tormenting people or in some cases, even possessing them. Genuine or not though, it's a pretty creepy video.
Number 5. The Nobleman. Gilles de Rais was originally hailed as a hero of France for his role in the 100 Years' War, a time during which he served as a comrade in arms to Joan of Arc, but the nobleman Gilles de Rais lived a secret and gruesome second life, where he enjoyed torment and ending the lives of people who couldn't defend themselves. In September 1440, de Rais was arrested after an almost decade-long spree, during which he may have ended the lives of over 140 victims. During his trial, both de Rais and several of his servants' accomplices confessed to their evil deeds. Now, besides ending people's lives, he also admitted to engaging in Satanism by repeatedly summoning the devil and his demonic minions. While the nobleman refused to sell his soul, he offered the blood and organs of his victims in exchange for knowledge and power over the dark arts. Number 4. Devil Made Me Do It. Now this story is more about accidentally getting possessed rather than summoning a demon, but I digress. Ed and Lorraine Warren helped exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. Now David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks had appeared on his neck afterward. David had started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. Now they did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. Now during his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Now Arnie Johnson was dating David's sister and was present for the exorcisms. In a desperate attempt to help David, Arnie coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating in David's exorcism. Afterwards, Arnie's personality changed. He would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, after his girlfriend Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine Warren informed Brookfield police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went on to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and the devil made me do it. Now the jury deliberated for 15 hours over 3 days before convicting Ernie of first-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, though he only served 5. Number 3. The Codex Gigas. The Codex Gigas was published in the early 13th century and is written in Latin. The Codex Gigas is a Bible written in a monastery in Bohemia, modern-day Czech Republic. It is also referred to as the Devil's Bible due to a fully colored portrait of Satan taking up a whole page. And when I say a whole page, I mean a full 36-inch page. Yes, this is the largest illustrated medieval manuscript in the world, with a length of 36 inches, a width of 20 inches, and a total back-to-back thickness of almost 9 inches. Wow. Now the page next to the illustration contains a full depiction of the kingdom of heaven, and there's lots of stories about this book, most likely stemming from the large portrait of the devil. According to the legend, the codex was written by Herman the Recluse, a monk who broke his monastic vow and was sentenced to be walled up alive. Now in order to try to escape his dire fate, he promised to write a book that would glorify the monastery forever, a book that contained the entire knowledge of the universe. Now Herman the Recluse was given one try to complete the book, and if he hadn't finished it by dawn, the sentence would be executed. Realizing by midnight that the task was impossible, Herman turned to the devil, who helped him finish the book for the price of his soul. Now some say that Satan's portrait is his own signature, and others believe that Herman drew the portrait himself as a thanks. Number 2, no more summoning. When this user was asked if they've ever summoned a demon, they said, "Have done it, I don't do it anymore." He didn't have a physical body. Most summonings don't include actual physical forms. We had a mental conversation and I used ghost writing to keep track of the convo. After the ritual, you're usually very drained of energy and it's easy to forget details, so documenting is always a good choice. He was very polite, friendly, and even bantered with me. After around an hour of talk, I ended the session and we never had any problems again. I contacted that specific demon one other time before stopping. Life is easier without demons. And coming in at number 1 is a conversation. This online user said, "I spoke to 6 demons over 2 nights. I had no agenda in speaking to these demons. I didn't want to enlist their help with something or even to form a working relationship with them. I just wanted to meet them and interview them. I realized that they are not called demons for nothing. They are chaotic energies who exist to screw things up in various unique ways, and they are tricky. Just talking to them was a bit exhausting. At no point did I feel genuinely threatened, but I did feel unsettled or uncomfortable. If you decide to speak to them, keep your guard up. Don't let yourself say 'deal' as a figure of speech, as one tried to make me do. Watch your words and watch their words too. I started mixing up who was saying what as I was writing the conversation down, which had never happened before, so I realized they were messing with me. I also made a strange Freudian slip, such as almost writing 'friends hurt each other' instead 'friends trust each other.' I noticed when these things happen. I told the spirits, hey, stop doing that, call them out on whatever they try to pull, and don't let them in, don't give them anything."